When we talk about this and we talk about where it comes from, I believe that imposter syndrome comes from a childhood wound where we don't feel good enough the way we are. First thing I want to do is just kind of share what imposter syndrome may be. And I found this article from time.com, and it says, imposter syndrome, the idea that you've only succeeded due to luck and not because of your talent or qualifications, was first identified in 1978 by psychologists Pauline Clance and Suzanne Imes. In their paper, they theorized that women are more uniquely affected by imposter syndrome. And what it found is that imposter syndrome can happen both in men and women. However, many times imposter syndrome is there because there's a part of ourselves that doesn't feel worthy or like we deserve some level of success. It's like we feel like we're meant to be a version of ourselves that was in the past, and that's what we're capable of, that's what we deserve, and anything beyond that feels fake and unreal. And I know for myself, when I started making videos on YouTube, there was a part where I was working that 9-to-5 job and I started making videos, and there definitely was imposter syndrome that came up for me where I felt like maybe what I have to say and what I have to share with the world isn't enough. You know, especially a lot of it was I felt like I'm creating videos on the law of attraction. And at the time, by the way, I started making videos on YouTube. I didn't start making videos on the law of attraction right away. I was making self-help videos on like habits and finding your purpose, feeling that making videos on YouTube was my purpose. And I started to make those videos, and then I started to make law of attraction videos, and those videos started to get way more views, and people were asking for more on it. So I started making more of law of attraction videos. And this is back in 2017 when I was still working my 9-to-5 job. And what was coming up for me was I was like, I feel kind of fake. I'm living at my dad's house. I'm making videos on YouTube. I'm working a 9-to-5 job. I haven't made it or attracted everything I want in my life. So am I good enough to share what I know and what I've researched and what I found in my own life? And at a certain level, I think for imposter syndrome, it has to do with giving yourself permission. Because if we're perfectionists, and I've seen this happen a lot with people getting on YouTube or people making videos or people just in general, is they put such a high bar that it's almost impossible to move forward because nothing's good enough. So it stops them and blocks them from actually putting out videos or going after their dream or applying for that job because they feel like if I just got a little bit more information, if I just had more connections, if I just found and read and watched another YouTube video, then I'd maybe have enough information for me to finally do it. And for a year before I even got on YouTube, that was my mentality. I was making a video once a month on YouTube, and I wasn't really growing that much. And I was like, well, maybe I need to meet the right person. Maybe if I meet a famous person, maybe they'll help put me on. Or maybe if I do more research and I have it more figured out. And what I eventually did, though, is I just decided that what I had was good enough. And I had to remind myself that what I have to say adds value, even if I don't have it all figured out perfectly. So making videos on YouTube was about me sharing my journey using the law of attraction with my 9-to-5 sales job. So it's not like I had to have the baller Lamborghini and the perfect house for me to make videos. I didn't set the bar so high. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to share with what I've learned through the law of attraction through working a sales commission job. Because in a way, that job was like a law of attraction playground in a way. Every day I started at zero. I got paid, 10% commission for whatever I sold. And actually at Barney's, it was like 5.75, but or 6.75? I forget. I think it's 5.75, but at Barney's or Nordstrom's it was 10%, so it was much easier to figure out. But what I would do is I would talk about, if I went into work and I had the intention of adding value to others, this was the kind of experience I got. I would do better. if I went into work with the intention of selling a certain dollar amount and I was using customers as a tool, as a stepping stone towards me getting, my goal met, it would have a very different result because I was attached to the numbers and the outcome. So I would share that. But even as I started making videos, I remember sometimes I'd see like a negative comment or something, and it would start to get to me, and I would start to question myself. I start to doubt myself. But then eventually I realized that I had to put myself on, and I had to believe in myself and not let the external dictate how I was showing up, not let the external tell me if I'm good enough or not. I had to generate the source from within. And when I even think about imposter syndrome now, I think imposter syndrome mainly comes from not generating the sense of validation and worthiness from within. I think imposter syndrome mainly will come from families of high achievers, where we were in a family and our parents expected a lot from us, and we put all this internal pressure on ourselves to perform a certain way, to get certain grades, to be a certain way. And if we aren't accomplishing that or to that standard, then we feel like we failed and we feel like we're not enough. There was a study that I read in one of these articles that I was doing prep work for before I got on here, and it was actually in Austin, Texas, which is where I am right now. But they did this research thing and found out who experiences imposter syndrome more, and they found that in Asian families, it was much more predominant than other races. And one of the reasons being is because in certain races, it becomes the culture for there to be a high expectation for you to become a doctor or a lawyer, to have this high standard. And then a lot of times also, think about it. A lot of times also, when you're in a family where your dad or your mom wants you to become a doctor or a lawyer or something very specific, there's this big thing on a pedestal that you have to accomplish. But not only that, that thing that's on a pedestal may be something you aren't even passionate in. It might be someone else's goal. It might be your dad or your mom's goal. And then you wonder why you feel fake doing it, and it might be because it's not your goal. It's not your passion. It's not your purpose. But not just that, there's so much pressure for it to be on a pedestal that it creates this sense of resistance. So when we talk about this, and we talk about where it comes from, I believe that imposter syndrome comes from a childhood wound where we don't feel good enough the way we are. So if we can perform a certain way, if we can do certain things, if we can be a certain way, then we can finally gain the validation and the support of others. But the challenge is that then we're drawing state from external sources versus drawing it from within and knowing that we are good enough. I realized early on in making YouTube videos that people felt what I felt. So if I were to carry myself in a way and just know that whatever I say adds value, whatever I want to share on YouTube adds value, even though I don't have it all figured out, even though I'm not some, rich guy in a Lamborghini in a mansion, I lowered the bar and realized that I just want to be myself. I set a higher value system on being authentic and sharing my passion versus the results it got me. I think imposter syndrome also, it comes from being really focused on the external results-based measurements. So imposter syndrome comes up where we feel fake because it's like we're trying to accomplish a trophy. We're trying to get a certain amount of money, a certain amount of YouTube subscribers or something. And because we're putting all this pressure on it, instead of drawing the source from within, we're externalizing the process and waiting to be told that we are good enough. And also it has us changing our values. We then change our values to where we value what other people think. We value some award or some trophy more than we value our own internal authenticity. A big change for me when I was understanding, even in my own journey of going through this process, I think of the masculinity shift that I've made over the last year, because prior I was living very inauthentically where I was being a people pleaser and I was trying to make other people happy, and I found myself like over explaining myself to people and trying to really appease any tension that people may feel. And what I realized is that version of me that felt very familiar and comfortable to be a people pleaser wasn't the authentic version of me. It was a trained survival mechanism version of me that was birthed out of having an ex-stepmom that was emotionally, mentally, and physically abusive from 7 to 15 years old. She was in my life. So after 15 years old came around, and from spending 7 years, think in numerology, that's like a whole number cycle, right? It's like 7-year cycles. It's a whole 7-year cycle from 7 to 15. Isn't that interesting? It was the second 7-year cycle of my life. She was in my life from 7 to 15 years old. And I felt like after getting out of that situation, and I went for 7 years of having to please her. In order to survive, I had to be a certain way. I had to be inauthentic. I had to pretend to be a way I wasn't. So even after getting out of that, I had this learned behavior of being a people pleaser, of being really nice, which also may have came from my dad's personality structure as well. But as of the last year, I've completely transformed that. And the biggest game changer was at first, I went about it in this toxic way where I thought being a man, being masculine meant I had to be assertive and I had to be dominant and I had to use all these techniques and shit. And that really wasn't it at all. But I remember questioning myself, am I really this kind of person, or am I meant to be just a softer person? Like, you know, and a big shift for me was actually having my shadow work integration coach tell me, and I realized that there was this like circumstance that I had where I lived with a friend of mine who's also successful, and that didn't work out. And I was like, man, I need my own place. And I realized that he told me, he's like, dude, you realize the reason that didn't work out is because you both are more alpha. And you both have a certain way you are, and you wouldn't be where you are today if you didn't have this masculine quality. And in that moment, it shifted my identity. I realized, oh, wait, what I thought I wasn't, I actually am, and the learned part of myself, the shadow part of myself, is more fake anyways. It's more of a learned thing that feels familiar. So I was questioning myself, doubting myself, and then eventually I just gave myself the permission. I realized that masculinity is much more about stillness. It's more about being. There's no tactic, there's no manipulation thing I'm supposed to do or say in order to get certain result. I just need to be more in my body, really was the key. Being more in my body, being present, being still, and being in my own frame, which means like having my own sense of values that I live by. So having a standard in a way. And that standard for me shifted from valuing what other people thought to valuing my own authenticity, even if that meant there was some tension or there were people that didn't agree with it or polarized people. So what I did is I then started valuing that. And I think that a lot of times imposter syndrome comes from not having your own values set or having them set by your parents. For a high achiever and we have all this pressure to perform a certain way, then what happens is we have this expectation that we have to be a certain way. It's on a pedestal, and we feel not enough because it's someone else's values. It's not even our own. But when we start living in alignment with who we really are and our own values, I think that then imposter syndrome begins to go away, and we don't put external validation on a pedestal. We have to generate that sorts of validation from within. We have to realize that we are good enough already. We don't need it from the outside. I hope you guys enjoyed that little segment from my podcast called the Aaron Doughty Podcast. If you want to listen to the rest of that episode, click the link below. You'll see it on iTunes and Spotify. You can download episodes. It's so easy to listen to. You can do it while you're working out, while you're driving. It's so convenient. And that's where new episodes go live every Tuesday and Thursday. Every single week, I have guests coming on the podcast. I have solo episodes, and we go really deep. This is really a place where I get very personable, and I share more about things I'm thinking of. I share my top book insights, and you can check it out and subscribe below, and you will see it there. So iTunes, Spotify, listen to the rest of the episode below as well, and I hope you guys enjoyed. And as always, I'll see you guys on the next episode. Peace, much love, and namaste.